Hello and welcome back to the VIP Bet Fantasy DFS Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin DeVries. Joining me in that box right over there is my good friend and partner in crime, Rob Langevin. Rob, this week is an interesting slate. We have the two Manchester clubs on here. Just got a notification on my computer that a VIP Bet stream just started. That's us. Manchester United, Manchester City, the two big names on the slate. A lot of conversations this week about the two of them because United kind of set up to defend against Liverpool last week. Hurt a lot of people in fantasy that way. City, obviously, the other thing, scoring basically a touchdown with their 7 goals last week. Is there one or the other that you're really favoring this week?
Looking at the matchup, you got to love United at home versus Huddersfield, and you can't really put down City on the road at Burnley. So wait, did I do that backwards? Yeah, I did that backwards.
Yeah, City or at home.
Burnley's at City. I'm favoring United here only because what I've researched in my my spare time. I guess I have a lot of soccer geekity in my spare time. Look at what Burnley's done on the road. They've played on the road 4 times. They've played Liverpool, they played Chelsea, and they played Spurs, and they played Everton. In those 4 games, they've let up a total of 4 goals. So 2 of those goals came to Chelsea in the opening weekend. So, I mean, from there, they've built on their momentum of playing on the road. I think that people are going to look at City and try to monopolize on that, looking that they just came off of 7 goals against Stoke, and probably load up their rosters with as many viable City options as they can. They'll probably get a defender because they're mildly priced. You can get a midfielder in there, whether it be Silva or the like. But yeah, I'd favor United here. I don't trust that Huddersfield is going to be able to stop United from scoring, but I don't think they're going to score they're not going to score 7 like we saw City do last week. But United is probably going to be on the tally sheet for at least 2 to 3. So yeah, I would favor United here.
As would I. And so without further ado, we'll just jump right into that matchup. Manchester United and Huddersfield. Oh, wait, I think it's at Huddersfield. But Manchester United, nonetheless, obviously the favored ones here. Obviously, Lukaku and De Gea are both really good options because they're arguably the best at their positions. But you already know that. So I'm going to talk about one Philip Jones. He's kind of been a fantasy darling in the industry pretty much from the start of the season. But Rob, you and I were discussing the other day, weirdly has really low ownership in the official game. Which make him as a surprise to some people. His ownership in this also has been surprisingly low, considering he's the 4th highest scoring defender in DraftKings this year, and is averaging over 5 points per game in the last 5 matches. Sorry, excuse me. And he has the most clean sheets, so he's definitely somebody that people should keep an eye on. For my dislike here, it's Henrik Mkhitaryan. After an amazing start to the season, he's really started to struggle on the pitch. He's still capable of those moments of magic that he pulled out the first few weeks of the season, but they just seem to be further in between, which is unfortunate. He has 3 single-digit performances in the last 5 matches, and his creation stats have been way down for a few weeks now. Could he still pop up with a moment of magic? Of course. I just don't want to rely on it or really count on it this week. 8,500 is pretty pricey still, so I'm kind of leaning away from him. As for this match, I do agree with you that it should be a United win. Huddersfield did start the season very well defensively, have not kept it up of late, unfortunately. I do think United will get multiples. As far as Lukaku goes, I think he's this year's Kane from last year, where for the majority of the season it was just one at a time. I think Lukaku gets his one. Up to you whether or not you think a price of 11-1 is too high for just probably 1 goal. But I do think United win this somewhat handily. Unfortunately, it still looks like Meunier isn't going to be back in time, so I'm not really sure where Huddersfield intend to score from. So I'm going to go United 3-0.
Yeah, 3-0 is a good call. I don't think Huddersfield's scoring this game. Like you mentioned, United has the best defense, and they're still going to continue to have the best defense after this game because I don't think Huddersfield score. This is the bigger question here. Based on this game and then the game I'm about to talk to, once you see the starting rosters, it's going to dictate who you're going to go with striker-wise. I think if Man City come out with Aguero and Jesus both starting in the lineup, I think that Lukaku's ownership is going to spike and go up because I think people are going to punt off of the Aguero and Jesus thing. I think that if Aguero or Jesus both either started, I think the ownership would probably be split. So from that standpoint, I like United here. I think Lukaku, like you said, gets his one. maybe 2, gets a lot more shots than you think he would probably, because I think he's going to be in a position where he can, basically rock and fire from inside the box like he basically sets himself up to do. Mkhitaryan is a good bad call, I guess we'll call it. 8,500. I'd rather punt down and go to someone else that's got some flair and some intrigue. He only has 1 goal in his last 6 games, and that's it. No assists to add to his tally.
Yeah.
I like the score. It's going to be 2-3-0 United.
Interesting question, because I didn't go there before now, and you didn't either just there as well. Both of us think that United are going to score a lot of goals. Neither of us think that Mkhitaryan is going to be the one providing them. So who do we think is going to provide them?
I think you're looking at maybe like a Juan Mata, or depending on how they line up in the midfield. There's no Fellaini, so somebody's got to slot into his spot. You could get an Ander Herrera pop up. You could have a Matic leaking forward to give you an assist, and depending on who they start, if they do decide to maybe put a Jesse Lingard in there too, he did play over the midweek for a spell, so you could see him as well.
Yeah, it'll definitely be an interesting one. Now to the other side of that coin, the other side of Manchester. City going to be hosting Burnley here. We already discussed them a little bit in the open, but which players are you really highlighting this week?
Yeah, this is, like I said in the opener, Burnley is no joke on the road. I think people are downplaying that. I know people are going to look at that and be like, oh, City just came off 7. I'm mentioning this again because just in case you skipped ahead, you're going to hear it again. Burnley is still good on the road. People are going to buy into City this week, and they're going to buy in hard. They're probably going to have a mini stack of City this week, probably 2 or 3 or possibly even 4 players, depending on how the salaries line up and how they can get them in. Listen, once the lineup comes out and we see what's what, City did play midweek in the Champions League, so it's going to be a little of a rotation risk, and you're worried about the Jesus/Aguero or Jesus plus Aguero up top. But when you look at it, I don't think there's really a wrong option here for City when you want to choose a player, but you only probably are going to choose 1 or 2. I don't suggest going steam deep on this and going way heavy with investing in a forward, a midfielder, a defender, and maybe a utility. I'd probably pick 1 player, possibly 2 on a lower level punt if you want to go with a Fernandinho or maybe a defender like Kyle Walker. But my real love this week is I'm trying to buy into the lowest factor into the City scoring, and that's David Silva at 8,200. His last 3 games, 19, 12, and 20 in the EPL. He's basically the dictator and facilitator through the center. Kevin De Bruyne is more on the wide side, and Kevin De Bruyne is brilliant at it. But he cost $2,200 more than David Silva, and is basically getting the same amount of return that David Silva is doing. For my dislike, listen, I know there's one guy in Burnley that does everything, takes all the set pieces, does all the crosses, is finally wrapped in a $6,100 blanket, and that's Robbie Brady. But for this game, how many set pieces and corner kicks is he actually going to have? City is still in the top 3 defensively, and they're probably going to limit to what Burnley does going forward. I'm not expecting a lot from Robbie Brady. Robbie Brady is more like an accumulator rather than a stacker. He does through the whole game. He'll get you points and points and points, 0.75 at a time, 0.5, 0.75. But in this game, I don't think he gets those points. So if you're rostering Robbie Brady this week, I think that you're probably going to be at a disadvantage because I think there's other intrinsic guys in other games on lesser teams like the Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Stoke, Leicester, Swansea. They all have similarly valued players that could probably get you the same return, but they have the intrigue of going against someone who could probably let in more than what City is going to offer.
Completely agree with you there.
Yeah, from a prediction standpoint, I don't know if Burnley has enough going forward with Chris Wood and Sam Vokes or any of their secondary attacking players to threaten City. City is a very attacking team, especially defense. We've seen what Kyle Walker can do getting forward. Otamendi is very dangerous in the box, so he does get up the pitch a lot. And I don't think Burnley has that counter-attacking to get on top of City. So I think this game's going to be 2-0 City.
I largely agree with that. To your point on Brady, only averaging 1 chance created per game over the last 5. This City defense has started to make some mistakes, though. After a long time of them and United being literally tied for the best defense in the league, City now dropping off a bit. Wouldn't be surprised if Burnley did create something, because up against the big boys, they just play the aerial game. And obviously it worked against Chelsea, worked against Tottenham late in the match. Think that it could benefit them here against Manchester City. I still think City win, but I think it might be 2-1 with Burnley getting on the score sheet themselves. On to Crystal Palace versus Newcastle. 3 weeks ago, this would have been a heinously boring match, but now all of a sudden, you have Crystal Palace upending Chelsea. Sorry, Rob. And Zaha was really the one that led the line. So he's the one that's the the player that I'm going to like. Not only did he lead the line fantasy-wise, he also led the line figuratively. With Benteke still out, Zaha is the player that's currently playing up front. Scored the goal last week. It looks like Benteke will be out till December. So it's obviously in the season-long games, if you buy in on him now, you have a lot of time to get value out of him. But in DFS, you're just basically playing a race against the price to see how long it'll take them to adjust him upwards. But for right now, for 6,300 for a forward is great. And unlike a lot of traditional forwards, like Kane and Morata, Zaha can create his own chances. We saw it against Chelsea. There were 3 people in between him and the goal, and it did not matter. And that ability, I think, is something that we should be looking at and praising for sure. Again, 6,300 for basically a striker for the time being that can create his own chances, I think, is a great value. Also, kind of a quiet like for Mikel Merino. Did not play last week against Newcastle, which is why he wasn't my official like this week. If he plays, though, I really like him. Is a very creative player, gets forward a lot. The only issue is it seems like Benitez isn't a fan of using him and John Joe Shelby together because he thinks both of them are a little too creative, neither really defensive-minded. But at 3,400, if he got the start, I think he'd be a really interesting option against a Crystal Palace defense that has obviously not been particularly great. As for a dislike, kind of a cop-out. I mean, I don't like the defenders in this matchup, but, I mean, look at these prices. After Matt Ritchie, everybody else is below 6,500. So I feel like a dislike inherently seems harsh. If there's somebody in this match that you're believing in for whatever reason, if you're like, this is the Ayoze Perez match for whatever reason. I know I've been an Atsu fan on and off throughout the season. I just think if you have a gut feeling on one of these guys, go for it. This match could really go either way. Palace could be the team they were before last week, put barely any shots on target, lose with Newcastle scoring multiples. It could flip the other way. Maybe Crystal Palace just gained confidence. Newcastle obviously struggling the past couple matches. Maybe Palace tear them open. I don't really know, but I think there's enough cheap players here that you can just kind of gamble and take the side that you'd rather have. As for a result, like I said, it could really go a lot of different ways. Don't really think either will keep clean sheets, though. I'll go with an interesting 2-2.
2-2 is fun. 2-2 games are fun because you know why? It means that there's goals in probably both halves. The thing I like about this slate is when you take away the United fixture and the City fixture, you have a lot of fill-in fixtures here, like Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Stoke, Swansea, Leicester. They're all great fill-in games, except for the last one. We're going to talk about that last.
I would say let's not talk about it, but we literally have to talk about
it. Got it. I love Zaha in this game, 6,300. It just screams bargain. He's probably going to be super, super overly owned this week because of it. Like Marino, but like you said John Joe Shelby is too creative. That's hilarious in my mind because I actually watch soccer and look at it and I'm just like, what is going on? But yeah, 2-2 is a fun score. I don't know if each team has that much firepower, and I'm not completely sold that Crystal Palace doesn't offer enough, isn't going to offer you anything defensive. I think there's some good bargains in there that you could probably surf out because Crystal Palace has been so bad defensively. I think that the prices for them are just completely downtrodden. But there are some bargains there, and Newcastle is not the offensive juggernaut that you'd expect to just blow this game wide open.
Yeah, I mean the big question here is going to be Joselu, who continues to be one of the top 5 in total shots, which is a metric in DraftKings, obviously, but his shot percentage is just plummeting week on week, which is obviously not something that you want to see. If he hits, obviously it could, like I said, that's the way Newcastle could run away with this, is if Joselu is in scoring form, because they create a surprising amount of chances. On to you talking about Bournemouth and Stoke, 2 teams that a lot of people liked coming into the season. I know we were fans of some of the Stoke defenders that they brought in, especially Zuma. Bournemouth, the return of Josh King, everybody was excited about. You and I liked Ibe for a time. But neither really living up to their fantasy potential, especially not Jack Butland. Is there somebody you like in this match, or do you think it's one that people should more avoid?
There's an easy one in this, and if anybody reads my stuff or listens to our other podcast, the forward guy, I'm going to say it's Mame Biram Diouf at 5,200 this week against Bournemouth's shaky defense. Bournemouth is not the defensive anything right now. Diouf in his last 3 EPL games, 13, 18, and 10. He's been priced below 5,500 the entire time. 55,000 would still be a bargain for Mame Biram Diouf. But, I like what Diouf does. I love me some OOP players. If anybody's not familiar, that's out-of-position players. Diouf basically plays basically Marcus Alonso's role, but on Stoke is basically what he plays. I think Stoke's going to score in this game. Bournemouth is, like I said, leaky at defense. I also have a little tout there for Junior Stanislas at 6,700. I think if he gets the start, I think he could find some space and create some good stuff. We've seen in the past that when Stanislas has a game, he really has a game, and it's basically a good game. And if you roster him, you pretty much basically cash. There was a couple games last year when he started and he was taking penalty kicks and then scoring goals on his own. He basically won weeks for people because that's what he does. He just completely shows up or he just goes invisible, which is funny because it's right around Halloween. So Junior Stanislas is the invisible man. People I don't like, Josh King, 5,700. There's too many similar players ranked around him in that 6,000 to 4,800 range. Diouf is one. Hesse is another, and I'll even throw a Nasser Chadley in there, who is forward eligible this week, in that forward range that are cheaper, giving probably a better return than what Josh King is going to do. I don't love the Stoke defense, but I don't hate them either. They're like a bend but don't break. We're sort of athletic, but kind of, if you catch us on a bad day, maybe we'll trip and fall at defense. This game's easily going to be 1-1 to me.
Yeah, I think this is not the match to watch this weekend, although more so than the last one
that we're going to talk about. There are worse. They're worse.
There certainly are. Yeah, I think 1-1's a decent shout. Neither team really shown any confidence that they can keep teams out, especially as they continue to deal with injuries and stuff. So, yeah, 1-1. But, much like the Newcastle Crystal Palace one, if they got on a run, both teams could just stack up goals. I don't know. I'm just feeling 2-2s. I'll ratchet it up to 2-2.
Kevin just pumping up the DFS score this week with all his goals, right? 2-2s.
Yep. Last week, by the way, we thought it could even reach the 160s. Somehow, in a match with 7 goals, we still overestimated how many points there would be. I was very surprised by that.
Was it 148? Something like that, 140 something.
Was I guess price wise, people were prohibited from having all of the City people.
It's hard to get it's hard to get more than 2 City players into a lineup. Basically, if you want to roster 3, you're basically going starting with scrubs.
Yeah. Stones and scrubs.
Stones and scrubs.
For the Leicester versus Swansea match, I'll reverse it. I don't know why DraftKings lists it vertical. It's very strange.
Yeah, because it's American. They do it. They Americanize it.
Yeah. Obviously, Swansea, the home team here. Leicester, the ones visiting. The player that I'm going to up in this one is going to be Tommy Carroll at 5,400. He was a preseason darling. Only has recently really started putting it together, though. Averaged over 10 points per game over the last 5 matches. And he's up against a managerless Leicester team that's in the bottom 5 of defense. I know he's not a sexy option, but as somebody that can just plug into your team, will probably get you points. Leicester not really doing much to keep people out at the other end. I mean, we were talking about who's going to be the creative option at Manchester United if Mkhitaryan isn't really living up to that billing. There is literally no one else at Swansea creative other than Tommy Carroll. They tried it with Leroy Fair. He's only creative in that he gets forward and then just scores goals, which is not what creativity is. And they thought Renato Sanchez could play that role. Have not really seen it yet, and he's coming off injury. So Tommy Carroll, the way I'm going there for my like. My dislike is going to be the Varez combo. 7,400 average price if you do one of those. Both have struggled lately. Mahrez, 4 single-digit outings in the last 5. Obviously, the last match being the good one. Vardy is now blanked in 2 consecutive matches with no shots on target in either. None. 0 times has he shot it and a keeper saved it. 0 times has it been within the frame of the goal in the last 2 matches. It's not good, is what that is. I would much rather, as you said earlier, I'd much rather either move up to the City United guys or down to people that are in more favorable matchups or more favorable form. I think this is going to be awful. Here's your 1-1. There it is. Leicester Swansea.
Yeah, I think it's 1-0. I think Leicester eke out a goal. But this is not one of those games where you want to look for mid-priced to high-priced guys, the higher-priced guys on this slate. You don't want to invest money in Vardy. You want to invest money in Mahrez. Look at the options that are in other games with teams that are blossoming instead of wilting, like, fall flowers. Renato Sanchez is allegedly fit and back maybe for this weekend for selection. I don't see any value there. This game and the next game are basically, they should have just stopped the slate at 4 games and just combined these 2 into their own slate and just had a free-for-all.
Just like a sad slate.
Oh, yeah, it's like this is the sad trombone, 25-cent buy-in.
Yep.
But so on to me for the last game, West Brom Southampton.
Woo!
I'm gonna quote. I'm gonna quote
Yeah.
this. I'm gonna quote this directly from my notes. Yuck with an exclamation point.
Yep. Seems fair.
Like, look at the players in this slate. Look at the fixture results that West Brom and Southampton have come up with. West Brom's leading goal scorer, Solomon Rondon, is tied with 4 other players with 1 goal.
Ugh.
1 goal. West Brom has scored 2 goals in a game once this year. Once. Yeah, Southampton is not any better. Their leading scorer just has 3 goals. It's Gabbiadini. He just scored 2 last week. I'm very descriptive in hand signals this week because this is just not the game that you want to be looking at. There's probably a good differential in here, and somebody's going to roster somebody, and they'll probably hit something on this. It'll probably be like the Matt Phillips show, or it's a James Ward-Prowse exposition. There's not anything you can do about that because that's how DFS and especially soccer works.
Yeah.
On any given day, Choupo-Moting can score 2 goals against the Premier League's the best defense in United. And then just make him, basically everybody knows his whole name now. It's Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting. But, West Brom is just not good offensively or defensively. Southampton just not good offensively or defensively at the moment. Southampton has the premise to be good defensively. They just aren't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They're just not gelling as a unit. Cedric is a little overpriced for this slate. Bertrand doesn't give you anything going forward. Virgil van Dijk is way too cheap to be involved in anything. He just basically stands at the center circle and doesn't do anything. He hasn't been picked out on set pieces or corners. Yeah, this game is going to be 0-0.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting shout because both defenses have actually been pretty disappointing of late, just conceding nonsense goals. And now is a perfect chance for neither of them to do it because both attacks are really bad as well. Both of them bottom 10 attacks, which is obviously not great. Both of them have scored exactly 7 goals and conceded exactly 9 goals. So it's not going to be an exciting 2 teams that line up. The exciting one where 2 teams line up somewhat similarly is on Sunday. It's Tottenham-Liverpool.
Yeah.
It is not this one right here. I'm so torn between whether this will be a disappointing 0-0 because neither attack shows up or a disappointing 1-1 because neither defense shows up. But both of them very low in chances created. I'll roll with you on the 0-0. I think I guessed 4 draws this week, which is strange.
Yeah. The other funny thing is who's going to be in goal for West Brom? Boaz Myhill got hurt, and Foster is not returning. So they're basically going with a 19-year-old kid, I believe, is their first choice at goalie. So anybody wants to roll the dice and make a secondary lineup of Southampton attackers and taking on a basically rookie goalie. It might not be a bad shout.
Shoot early and often, I'm sure will be the instruction in the dressing room.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll come to you now, Rob, for your team of the week.
My team, we'll start at how it lines up now. We usually go from goalkeeper up, but we'll start at forwards. For forwards, I have Zaha and Lukaku, 6,300, 11,100. I think Lukaku gets a goal, but I don't know how many. But I'm banking that he scores and the City score is striated across, so I'm not going to get killed. Zaha is too much of an intriguing play at 6,300 going against Newcastle. What I saw last week, he's basically DFS gold when he plays because he's a dribbling machine. He could be a passing machine. He gets fouled a ton. It's basically what you want for 6,300. Through my midfield, I have David Silva at 8,200. I expect him to get on the tally sheet if a City does score, which most of their play is going to be through the middle because Burnley likes to shut down the wings, and that basically may negate Raheem Sterling and De Bruyne. So look for David Silva coming up through the middle. On defense, I have Charlie Daniels and Mamadou Sakho. Charlie Daniels, it's kind of expensive, 5,000. Yeah. But look at the games he's played when he's allowed to get up and down the pitch and not playing against a team that's always attacking. He's had decent enough returns that 5,000 isn't a bad price, especially because I had a little bit of money because I didn't go City heavy on this lineup. This is probably just one of the lineups I'm making this week. And in goal, I'm going with the old strategy that we just told you not to do. I have Nick Pope in goal at 3,600. I think Burnley's defense is going to be just good enough to ward off the goals, but allow Nick Pope to have shots. Look at Nick Pope's returns in the games where he played against good teams. He had 18 points against Everton on the road, and then 13 points against Liverpool in a game that he let up a goal. So you're getting decent enough returns from a goalie. At 3,600, he's one of the cheaper goalies on the slate. The West Brom goalie will probably be the cheapest goalie on the slate once they figure out where he is and if he's born yet. they'll put him. Then he'll get a price assigned to him. And then my utility is Mame Biram Diouf at 5,200.
It's your boy.
I'm gonna adopt twin babies and name them Mame and Biram, and then they're just gonna have my last name, which is Lansman.
Okay, the GIF part doesn't really come into play. Fair enough. Here's my team on the screen, off center, which is the kind of stuff you love to see, professionalism-wise. But anyway, Romelu Lukaku and Raheem Sterling up front. I do see your point, although I was riding so high on my Raheem Sterling call from last week. Just nailed it, crushed it, out of the park. So they're my forwards. In midfield, I have Zaha and Marino, even though they're in the same match together. Think that that's going to be an interesting one. Oh, I just realized I could do this. So now it's cleaned up for the people looking at home. In defense, I have Kyle Walker, who I currently think, and I've said elsewhere, I think he might be the best defensive player right now in fantasy. With three assists, 4 clean sheets in his last 5 matches is just absolutely nuts. Still prone to the odd mistake, but he makes up for it with the assist, so you'll take that. And have paired him with Phil Jones as a defender who has just been tearing things up lately. I mentioned him in my Manchester United bit. Have paired him with, and Rob, I took your advice on going strong goalkeeper, David De Gea at 5,800. They are not going to concede in this match. I mean, I'll knock on wood if you'd like, but I do not see that happening. So Phil Jones and De Gea, my pairing for goalkeeper defender this week. And my util is Tom Carroll. So both of us sticking with guys we played as our utils. I think this is going to be a weird one. I just have that feeling this is going to be a whole bunch of random people scoring goals this week. But hopefully.
Well, there's going to be goals by people from Newcastle, people from Bournemouth and Stoke that aren't going to be rostered a ton. So the points are going to be either had or not had by a lot of players, because a lot of people are not going to be investing in the guy who scores for Leicester. It could be Albrighton, it could be somebody for Swansea could score. I don't think anybody is going to be heavily invested in that. And if anybody invests heavily in West Brom Southampton, I want their phone number, because they're complete guessers and they don't do this professionally.
What do you think? 110, 120-ish?
Yeah, I'd say between 120, 130. I think someone big who's going to be owned hits. And probably get you between 30 to 35 points. So probably somebody's gonna have a goal and an assist, maybe goal and 2 assists. Somebody big's gonna hit, depending on who it is, and he's probably gonna be rostered universally. The bigger rosterable guys I see this week are Lukaku, the winner of the Aguero Jesus. If they both start, then it negates them. Silva, Sterling, Wilfred Zaha is gonna be owned a ton because of his price. Defensively and goalkeeper, it's going to be striated across the board. I don't think anybody's going to be owned universally. But it's basically City, who you're going to capitalize on. United, Juan Mata is probably going to be owned a pretty good chunk, probably in the teens, because they want someone to playmaking buddy, and they're probably sold out on Mkhitaryan. But 120 to 130 sounds like a decent enough price for me.
Cool. That'll do it for us this week. I'm your host, Kevin DeVries, at Cavroff on Twitter. Now below me in the box is Rob Langevin, who you can find on Twitter at FPL_MNOP. Of course, be sure to go to VIP-bet.com and check them out on Twitter. Their handle is their name. Thanks so much for joining me, Rob. Thanks to everybody at home for listening, and we'll catch you